I found the emails on a Tuesday. It's strange how the worst moments of your life can arrive on the most ordinary days. That morning I'd woken up at 5:47 a.m., exactly 13 minutes before my alarm. I'd made coffee in the French press. Sarah said was pretentious but used every morning anyway. I'd kissed her forehead while she pretended to sleep, grabbed my steel-toed boots from the mudroom, and driven to the Henderson site where we were 3 days behind schedule on a mixed-use development that would bring 40 new apartments to German Village. I was a project manager. My job was to solve problems, to see 3 steps ahead, to catch the things everyone else missed. I never saw her coming. The emails were on her iPad, which she'd left charging on the kitchen counter when she rushed out that morning for what she said was an early yoga class. I only picked it up because my phone had died and I needed to check the weather report. We had concrete being poured, and rain would cost us another day. But when the screen lit up, there it was. A preview notification from someone named Marcus, with a string of words that made my coffee taste like acid. Last night was incredible. When can I see you again? Your husband leaves early on Thursdays, right? I stood there for what might have been 30 seconds or 30 minutes. The kitchen clock, a vintage thing Sarah had found at an estate sale and insisted we overpay for, ticked loudly in the silence. Outside, our neighbor Mrs. Chen was watering her roses. A cardinal landed on the fence, normal life continuing normally while mine stopped completely. I didn't throw the iPad, didn't call her, didn't scream. Instead, I did what I'd been trained to do in my line of work. I gathered information. I scrolled, I read. I pieced together a timeline that stretched back 14 months, 14 months of yoga classes that weren't yoga classes, work dinners that weren't work dinners, weekend conferences in Cleveland that never appeared on any company calendar. Marcus was a regional sales director for a pharmaceutical company, divorced, 2 kids he saw on alternating weekends. He lived in Dublin, 20 minutes north, in one of those new townhome developments with names like Autumn Ridge or Maple Crossing. According to the emails, Sarah had been to his place 37 times. I counted. They'd been to Chicago together, Nashville, once, incredibly, to Columbus's own Hilton, downtown, less than 4 miles from our condo, while I'd been visiting my father in Toledo. The last email was from 3 days ago. She'd told me she was shopping for my birthday present. "You make me feel alive again," she'd written to him. Like the person I was supposed to be before I got trapped in this life. Trapped. I set the iPad down carefully, precisely in the exact spot she'd left it. Then I walked to our bedroom, pulled my old army duffel from the top shelf of our closet, and started packing. Sarah came home at 2:47 p.m. I'd called in sick, to work for the first time in 3 years. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a beer I hadn't touched and a printed stack of bank statements showing cash withdrawals I'd never questioned before, but now understood perfectly. "Ethan?" Her voice was light, unsuspecting. She had a grocery bag in one hand and her yoga mat bag over her shoulder. The one that had probably never seen the inside of a yoga studio. "You're home early. Are you feeling?" She stopped when she saw my face. "I know," I said. 2 words. That's all it took for the color to drain from her skin, for her shoulders to slump, for the mask she'd been wearing for over a year to finally crack. "Ethan, don't." I held up my hand. "I don't want to hear the reasons or the excuses or how it just happened or how you never meant to hurt me. I read the emails, Sarah, all of them. I saw the bank statements. I know about Marcus. I know about Chicago and Nashville and the Hilton. I know about the yoga classes and the work dinners and every single lie you've told me for the past 14 months. She set the grocery bag down. I could see a baguette sticking out of the top. Some fancy cheese she liked. A bottle of the Pinot Grigio we used to drink on Friday nights while we cooked dinner together and talked about our days. Evidence of a life that had already ended. We just hadn't buried it yet. "Are you leaving?" she whispered. "I already left," I said. "I'm just still sitting in this kitchen." The next 6 weeks were a special kind of hell. Sarah cried. She apologized. She swore she'd end it with Marcus, that it was a mistake, a midlife crisis, a symptom of problems we could fix if we just went to counseling. Her parents called. Her sister sent me long text messages about forgiveness and commitment. Even my own mother suggested I might be giving up too easily on 7 years of marriage. But here's the thing about betrayal that no one tells you. It's not just about the cheating. It's about looking back at every moment of your shared history and wondering what was real. Every "I love you." Every family dinner where she squeezed my hand under the table. Every time she fell asleep with her head on my chest while we watched Netflix. Every plan we'd made for the future. The house we were going to buy in Upper Arlington. The kids we'd talked about having. The trip to Ireland we'd been saving for. All of it was now suspect. All of it carried an asterisk. I couldn't look at her without seeing someone I didn't know. We listed the condo in March. In Ohio's market, it sold in 11 days to a young couple who were expecting their first child. The husband kept talking about which room would be the nursery, and I had to excuse myself. To the bathroom where I gripped the sink and tried not to vomit. The divorce was finalized. On a Thursday in April, we'd agreed to split everything 50-50, which felt absurd given the circumstances. But I didn't have the energy to fight. I just wanted it over. Wanted to stop seeing her name on my phone. Wanted to stop waking up at 3 a.m. replaying conversations, looking for the signs I'd missed. On my last day at Holloway & Sons Construction, my boss, Jack, took me to lunch at the German Village coffee shop and tried to convince me to stay. "You're the best PM we've had in a decade," he said. "Don't let this derail your whole career." But that was exactly the problem. My career, my marriage, my friends, my routines, all of it was contaminated now. Columbus wasn't my home anymore. It was a crime scene. I needed to disappear. I found the cottage on Craigslist at 2 a.m. on a Sunday in late April, running on whiskey and insomnia. It was in a town called Anchor Bay, population 3,200, tucked into the Northern California coast about 2 hours north of San Francisco. The listing had 4 photos: a small weathered structure with blue shutters and a front porch, a view of rocky cliffs and gray-blue ocean, a narrow kitchen with butcher block counters, and a bedroom with windows facing the sea. 6-month lease available, quiet, no tourists. Perfect for writing or thinking or hiding from the world. That last line sold me. I called the number at 6 a.m. California time, 9 a.m. Ohio time, not caring if I woke anyone up. A woman answered on the 3rd ring, her voice rough with sleep. "This better be good. The cottage in Anchor Bay, is it still available?" There was a pause. "You know it's May, right? Peak season up here, and that place is off the main road with spotty cell service and no dishwasher. I don't care." Another pause. "You running from something?" I almost laughed. "Is it that obvious?" "Honey, the only people who call me at 6 in the morning about a rental cottage in the middle of nowhere are either running from something or running toward themselves. Sometimes both. First month plus deposit, credit check, no parties, no drama. You interested? I can wire the money today." "Well, all right then. Welcome to Anchor Bay, stranger. Try not to fall off the cliffs." I packed what fit in my truck, a 10-year-old Ford F-150 that had survived more job sites than I could count, and left everything else in storage: clothes, books, tools, my college diplomas, wedding photos I couldn't bring myself to throw away but couldn't stand to look at. All of it locked in a climate-controlled unit on the east side of Columbus. A previous life boxed up and labeled and forgotten. The drive took 4 days. I took back roads when I could. Stopped at motels that charged by cash, ate at diners where nobody knew my name or story. Nebraska, Wyoming, Nevada. Each mile felt like peeling off a layer of skin. By the time I crossed into California and started following the coast north on Highway 1, something in my chest had loosened. The Pacific Ocean stretched out to my left, vast and indifferent and somehow comforting in its permanence. The road curved and climbed and dropped, and I drove with the windows down, letting the salt air burn my lungs. I arrived in Anchor Bay on a Wednesday evening in mid-May as fog was rolling in from the ocean. The town was exactly as advertised. One main street with a general store, a post office, a diner called The Anchor, a coffee shop with a hand-painted sign, and a real estate office that looked like it. Hadn't been updated since 1987, no stoplights, no chain restaurants, just weathered buildings and pickup trucks and the constant sound of waves hitting rocks. The cottage was 3 miles north of town on a dirt road that wound up through coastal pine and cypress. It sat alone on a half-acre lot that ended at a cliff overlooking the ocean, and it was somehow both smaller and more perfect than the photo suggested. Blue shutters, covered porch, a wooden fence that needed repair, and beyond it nothing but sea and sky and the distant shadow of a lighthouse on a rocky outcrop a quarter-mile up the coast. I sat in my truck for 10 minutes, engine off, just listening. Waves, wind, the creak of trees. No sirens, no traffic. No voices asking me if I was okay or telling me what I should do next. Just silence and space and the possibility of becoming someone new. The first week I barely left the cottage. I unpacked my truck. I bought groceries at the general store where a woman named Dot rang me up and asked exactly 0 personal questions. I walked the cliff trail every morning as fog burned off the ocean, and I taught myself to breathe again without feeling like my chest was collapsing. The cottage had a wood stove that I learned to operate, a shower with water pressure that fluctuated based on mysterious forces, and a screened porch, where I could sit and watch the lighthouse beam sweep across the dark water every night. The landlord had left behind a French press, the universe's idea of a joke, and I used it every morning making coffee that was somehow both better and worse than what Sarah and I used to drink. I didn't think about her, or I tried not to, but grief doesn't respect intention. It was the little things that ambushed me. Opening a box and finding the camping mugs we'd used on a trip to Hocking Hills, hearing a song on the radio that we'd danced to drunk at her sister's wedding. Waking up and reaching for someone who hadn't been there in months even before I left. But slowly, gradually, the gaps between those moments grew longer, and the ocean helped. There was something about watching waves hit the same rocks over and over, reshaping them molecule by molecule, that made me think maybe I could be reshaped too. I met Marianne on day 9. I was carrying groceries from my truck badly, because I'd tried to do it all in one trip like an idiot, and a bag split open, sending oranges rolling down my driveway. I was on my hands and knees cursing and chasing citrus when I heard a voice. "Hold on, I've got the escapees." I looked up to see a woman jogging up the road with a golden retriever on a leash. She was maybe mid-30s, wearing running shoes and a faded sweatshirt, her brown hair pulled back in a ponytail that had mostly given up. She scooped up 2 oranges and brought them over, and the dog, because of course it did, immediately shoved his nose into my hand. "Scout manners," she said, then looked at me with a smile that was warm but not intrusive. "You're the new neighbor. I live in the gray cottage just up the hill." "Ethan," I said, standing up with oranges cradled against my chest. And yeah, new, obviously. The oranges gave it away. She handed me the fruit she'd rescued. "I'm Marianne. This is Scout, who has no concept of personal space." The dog was wagging his entire body, looking at me like I was the most interesting thing he'd seen all week. I reached down to scratch his ears and something in my chest unknotted slightly. "Nice to meet you both. Welcome to the neighborhood." Which is, just us and the Mackenzies up the road. But they're in their 80s and go to bed at 7. She paused, seeming to calculate something. "If you need anything, recommendations, or where to find a decent mechanic, or just want to borrow some coffee, I'm around." The gray cottage with the ridiculous garden gnomes. My daughter thinks they're hilarious. "You have a daughter?" 6 years old and convinced. She's going to find mermaids if she looks hard enough at low tide. That smile again, a little sad around the edges. "Anyway, I'll let you get back to grocery wrangling." She started to walk away, Scout pulling at the leash, and I almost let her go. Almost, but there was something in the way she'd offered help without prying, the casual kindness that expected nothing back, that made me call out, "Hey, Marianne, where would you go for breakfast around here? If you were new and didn't know anyone?" She turned back. "The anchor. Get the sourdough pancakes. Tell Linda that Marianne sent you and she'll give you extra butter. Thanks." "Anytime." I watched her continue up the road, the dog bounding ahead, and realized it was the first real conversation I'd had in 9 days that didn't involve a transaction. It felt like progress. The anchor became my routine. I started going every Saturday morning, sitting at the counter with coffee and pancakes, reading paperbacks I bought at the general store. Linda, who was exactly as advertised, would refill my coffee, without asking, and occasionally drop off extra bacon. "You settling in all right?" she asked one morning in early June. "Getting there. Good. We like it when people stick around." She wiped down the counter. Most folks who rent that cottage leave after a month. Too quiet for them. But you've got the look of someone who needed quiet. I didn't argue. Marianne and I kept running into each other. Not in a rom-com way, not manufactured or cute. Just the natural rhythm of two people who lived on the same stretch of isolated coastline and walked the same trails and shopped at the same store. She'd wave from her porch when I drove past. I'd see her at the coffee shop on Sunday mornings, sitting with a book while her daughter, Emma, I learned, drew pictures at the table. Once Scout got loose and ended up on my porch, and I walked him back up the hill, where Marianne apologized profusely while Emma giggled. "He likes you," Emma announced matter-of-fact. "Emma, that's not—" "No, it's true, Mom. Scout only goes to visit people he likes. He's a good judge of character." Marianne met my eyes, embarrassed but amused. Apparently we're both at the mercy of a golden retriever's social instincts. "Could be worse judges," I said. Late June brought a heat wave that was unusual for the coast. The fog burned off early and stayed away, leaving the days bright and hot and the ocean glittering like hammered metal. I'd taken to swimming in the cove below my cottage, a treacherous scramble down the cliff to a rocky beach that only existed at low tide, where the water was so cold it stopped your breath. I was walking back up one evening, towel around my neck and hair still dripping, when I saw Marianne sitting on the bench at the cliff's edge near my cottage. She had a glass of wine and was watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple that seemed impossible. "That bench came with the cottage," I said, approaching. "But you're welcome to it." She looked up, startled. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. I used to come here sometimes before you moved in. The view is better from your side." And Mrs. Chen never minded, but I should have asked. "I don't mind either." She relaxed slightly. "Emma's with her grandmother tonight. First sleepover in a while." The silence in my house got too loud. I understood that completely. "Want company?" I asked. "Or would you rather?" "Company's good." I sat down, leaving space between us, and we watched the sun sink toward the horizon. The lighthouse beam was already starting its rotation even, though it wasn't quite dark yet. "How long have you lived here?" I asked. 4 years. We moved from Sacramento after—" She paused, choosing her words. "After Emma's father died. Needed somewhere quiet, somewhere we could heal." "I'm sorry." "Thank you." She took a sip of wine. He was a good man. Terrible driver, but a good man. The joke was gentle, practiced. A way of talking about grief that acknowledged it without drowning in it. "What about you?" she asked. "What brings someone from—" She trailed off, realizing she didn't know. "Ohio, Columbus." "What brings someone from Columbus, Ohio, to a falling-apart cottage on the California coast?" I could have deflected. Could have given her the easy answer about needing a change or wanting adventure. But sitting there watching the sky burn, with someone who'd already admitted her own grief, the truth came out easier than I expected. My wife had an affair. For over a year, I found out, and everything kind of collapsed. The marriage, the job, my sense of who I was. So I sold everything and drove west until I found a place that felt far enough away. Marianne didn't offer platitudes or sympathy or say she was sorry, which I appreciated more than she could know. "That's brutal," she said simply. "Yeah. Are you far enough away yet?" I thought about it. Getting there. We sat in silence as the sun touched the horizon. The waves below us crashed and retreated, endless and patient. "Can I ask you something?" Marianne said quietly. "Sure. Do you think we get multiple chances? At happiness, at love, at building a life? Or is it just one shot, and if you miss it or lose it, that's it?" I turned to look at her. She was still facing the ocean, but I could see the vulnerability in the question, the fear behind it. "I don't know," I admitted. A few months ago, I would have said no. Would have said I had my chance and I wasted it on someone who didn't want it. But being here, watching the ocean reshape the rocks, starting to feel like maybe I can breathe again, I paused. "I think maybe we get as many chances as we're brave enough to take." She smiled, small and sad and hopeful all at once. "That's either very wise or very naive." "Probably both." The sun disappeared below the horizon and the sky deepened to violet. The lighthouse beam swept across the water, steady and sure. "Thank you for letting me sit here," Marianne said. "Anytime." July passed in a rhythm of small moments that accumulated into something larger. Marianne brought over zucchini bread one morning. My garden is out of control and Emma will only eat so much, and we ended up talking on my porch for an hour about nothing important. Books we'd read, whether the coffee shop scones were worth the price, how Scout had developed an obsession with chasing seagulls. I helped her fix a broken fence post in her garden. She invited me to dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta and salad. But Emma wants to show someone the mermaid picture she drew, and I went, awkward and rusty at being a guest in someone's home. But Emma's enthusiasm about mermaids and Scout's insistence on sitting on my feet made it easier than I expected. We fell into an unspoken pattern. Coffee on Sunday mornings at the cafe, evening walks along the cliff trail, conversations that started about weather and groceries, but drifted into deeper territory. She told me about her fiancé, Michael, how they'd met in college, got engaged at 25, planned a wedding for the following spring, how he died 6 weeks before the wedding when a drunk driver crossed the center line on Highway 50, how she'd been 3 months pregnant and hadn't told him yet because she'd wanted to wait until after the wedding. Emma has his eyes, she said one evening as we walked, and his stubbornness. Sometimes I'll see her make a face or laugh a certain way, and it's like he's still here, just in miniature form. I told her about Sarah, about the emails and the lies and the feeling of being erased from my own life, about how I'd spent the first month after the divorce convinced I'd done something wrong, that if I'd been a better husband or paid more attention or worked less, she wouldn't have needed someone else. You know that's not true, right? Marianne said. Her choices weren't about you being insufficient. They were about her being broken in ways you couldn't fix. Logically, yeah. I know that. But there's knowing something and then there's believing it. Tell me about it. August brought Emma's 7th birthday, and Marianne threw a party at their cottage with streamers and a homemade cake and 6 little girls who screamed and ran through the house like feral cats. I'd been invited casually. You don't have to come, but Emma would love it if you did. And honestly, I could use someone over the age of 8 to talk to. And I showed up with a book about ocean animals that Emma pronounced perfect. Watching Marianne with the kids, I saw a different version of her. Playful, patient, completely in her element. She organized games and mediated arguments and cleaned up spilled juice without complaint. And when one of the girls fell and scraped her knee, Marianne scooped her up and cleaned the wound and made her laugh in under 2 minutes. You're good at this, I told her later, after the party had ended and we were cleaning up wrapping paper. 7 years of practice, she said. Though honestly, some days I still feel like I'm faking it. Like I'm going to wake up and realize I have no idea what I'm doing. I think that's just called being a parent. Maybe. She folded a tablecloth, precise and methodical. Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing enough. If Emma's okay with it just being the 2 of us. If she needs... She stopped and I knew what she wasn't saying. If she needs a father. If I'm enough on my own. She seems pretty damn happy to me, I said. And she's got you, which is clearly more than enough. Marianne smiled, but there was something fragile in it. Thanks, Ethan. We almost kissed in mid-August. It was late, almost midnight, and we'd walked down to the cove below my cottage, a dangerous climb in the dark. But the moon was full and the tide was low, and Marianne had wanted to show Emma the bioluminescence that sometimes appeared in the waves. Emma had already gone to bed, but Marianne and I went anyway, just the 2 of us, scrambling down the cliff path with flashlights and the sound of the ocean getting louder. When we reached the beach, the water was glowing. Every wave that broke left trails of blue-green light like liquid stars. Marianne gasped, and I realized I'd been holding my breath. I've lived here 4 years, and I've never seen it this bright, she whispered. We waded in, shoes off, jeans rolled up, and the water lit up around our feet with every step. It felt like magic, like being inside a fairy tale, like the world had cracked open to show us something secret and precious. Marianne turned to me, her face illuminated by moonlight and bioluminescence. Her eyes bright, and I was suddenly intensely aware of how close we were standing, how her hand was inches from mine, how easy it would be to close the distance. Ethan, she said softly. Yeah? This is... She paused, searching for words. I'm really glad you moved here. Me too. We stood there, waves glowing around us, and the moment stretched thin and taut. I could have kissed her. She wouldn't have pulled away. But something held me back. The knowledge that we both carried too much. That we needed to be sure that some things were worth waiting for. We should head back, she said finally, before the tide turns. Yeah, okay. We climbed back up in silence, but it was a different kind of silence than before. Charged, full of possibility. Sarah called on a Thursday in late August. I'd just finished a swim and was making coffee when my phone rang with a number I'd deleted but still recognized. I stared at it for 3 rings, debating before answering. Hello? Ethan, hi, it's me. As if I wouldn't know. What do you want, Sarah? She paused and I could hear traffic in the background. I needed to hear your voice. I know I don't have the right to call, but I've been thinking about you and I needed to know you're okay. I'm fine. Are you really? Because you left so completely, Ethan. You sold everything and disappeared and nobody knows where you are. Your mom said you're in California, but she doesn't have an address and that was intentional. Another pause. I miss you. The words hit like a slap. I closed my eyes, gripping the counter. You don't get to say that. I know I don't, but it's true. Marcus and it ended. It was a mistake, all of it, and I see that now. I threw away 7 years for something that wasn't real, and I hate myself for it, but Sarah, stop. Please, just listen. I'm not asking you to forgive me or take me back or anything like that. I just need you to know that I'm sorry, that I loved you even if I was too broken to show it right, that you deserved better. I thought about Marianne, about glowing waves and Sunday morning coffee and Emma's laughter, about the version of myself I was becoming in this small coastal town. Far from everything I used to be. I appreciate that, I said carefully. But I need you to not call again. Ethan, I mean it. I'm building something new here, and I can't do that if I'm still tethered to what we were. You need to let me go. Silence on the line. Then quietly, okay, I'm sorry. For everything. I know, goodbye, Sarah. I hung up before she could respond and stood there, phone in hand, feeling like I'd just run a marathon. Scout barked in the distance. Marianne was probably walking him, and the sound pulled me back to the present. I deleted the number again, blocked it this time, and went outside to breathe. I didn't tell Marianne about the call immediately. I wasn't sure how to bring it up or if I even should, but it sat in my chest like a stone, making everything feel heavier. She noticed. Of course she noticed. You've been quiet, she said one evening as we sat on my porch, watching fog roll in. Is everything okay? My ex called. She went very still. When? Few days ago. And I told her not to call again. That I was moving on and she needed to let me. I paused, but it messed with my head anyway. Made me think about everything I left behind. Everything I'm trying not to be anymore. Marianne was quiet for a long moment, processing. Are you still in love with her? She asked finally, her voice careful. No. The answer came quickly, certainly. I don't think I am. Maybe I never was, or maybe I was in love with who I thought she was. But the person she actually is? The one who lied for 14 months and made me feel crazy for trusting her? No, I'm not in love with that person. But you're not over it? No, not completely. She nodded slowly. I get that. Michael's been gone for 7 years. And some days I still find myself starting to tell him something before I remember he's not here. Grief isn't linear. Neither is healing. Are you over it? I asked. Over him? I don't think you get over losing someone you loved. You just learn to carry it differently. She looked at me, but I'm not waiting for him to come back. I'm not frozen in place. I'm just trying to figure out who I am in this after version of my life. Yeah, that's it exactly. We sat with that for a while. The fog thickening around us, the lighthouse beam cutting through it in slow sweeps. Can I ask you something? Marianne said. Always. What are we doing? The question hung between us, honest and vulnerable and terrifying. I don't know, I admitted. But I know I look forward to seeing you every day. I know I think about you when you're not around. I know that being near you makes me feel like maybe I'm not as broken as I thought. That's not fair, she said softly. What isn't? Putting your healing on me. I can't be the thing that fixes you, Ethan. That's too much weight. She was right. I knew she was right. You're not fixing me, I said carefully. I'm doing that myself, slowly, badly, but I'm doing it. You just make me want to, make me believe it's possible. That's different. She studied me, searching for something. I have to think about Emma. She's already attached to you. And Scout is obsessed, and if this goes somewhere and then falls apart, it's not just me who gets hurt. I know. So we have to be sure. Or at least as sure as two broken people can be. Okay. Okay? Yeah, okay, let's be sure. Being sure meant going slow. Intentionally, deliberately slow. We didn't kiss again, didn't rush into anything. Instead, we did something harder. We actually dated. Marianne got her mother to watch Emma one Friday in early September. And we drove into Fort Bragg for dinner at a restaurant overlooking the harbor. We talked for 3 hours about everything and nothing. Our childhoods, our dreams, our fears, our favorite movies, the small ridiculous things that made us laugh. I wanted to be a marine biologist when I was 10, Marianne told me over dessert. Had this whole plan to study dolphins and live on a research boat. What happened? Reality. Turns out marine biology requires a lot of math and I'm terrible at math. So I became a teacher instead, which is basically the same thing except with smaller humans and no dolphins. I laughed. I wanted to be an architect. Drew buildings constantly as a kid, but I was better at the construction side than the design side, so I ended up managing projects instead of creating them. Do you miss it? The work? Sometimes. I miss the satisfaction of seeing something get built, of solving complex problems, but I don't miss the pressure. Don't miss measuring my worth by productivity. What do you miss? The question caught me off guard. I thought about it, really thought. I miss having purpose, I said finally. I miss knowing what I'm supposed to do when I wake up in the morning. Out here, I'm just existing, which was what I needed at first, but now I'm starting to wonder what comes next. Maybe that's the point, Marianne said. Maybe you needed to exist without purpose for a while so you could figure out what purpose you actually want, instead of the one you inherited or fell into. You're pretty wise for a second-grade teacher. 7-year-olds teach you a lot about existential questions. Last week, Emma asked me why the sky doesn't fall down. Try answering that coherently. The town noticed us, of course. Small towns always do. Linda at the Anchor started seating us at the corner table without asking. Dot at the general store smiled knowingly when we came in together. And one Sunday at the coffee shop, an older woman named Jean, who I'd seen around but never spoken to, approached our table. "You're Marianne's new fellow," she said, matter of fact. I blinked. It's fine, dear. Good for her. Been alone too long, that girl. And you seem decent enough even if you are from Ohio. She patted my shoulder. Just don't hurt her. She's one of ours. After she walked away, Marianne was trying not to laugh. Welcome to small town life, she said. Everyone knows everything and they're all emotionally invested in your happiness. Should I be worried? Only if you do something stupid. Emma asked me about my intentions on a Tuesday. We were building a sandcastle on the beach. She'd informed me that she needed an assistant because this was going to be the biggest castle ever, when she stopped mid-dig and looked at me seriously. Are you going to marry my mom? I nearly dropped my shovel. That's a big question, Emma. Scout says you should. Scout talks to you? Not in words, but I can tell what he's thinking. And he thinks you're nice and you make Mom smile more. I sat back on my heels, trying to figure out how to have this conversation with the 7-year-old, who was apparently consulting with her dog about my relationship status. I like your mom a lot, I said carefully. And I like you a lot. And Scout, even though he drools on my shoes. But marriage that's something grown-ups have to decide together when they're ready. But you're thinking about it? Yeah, I'm thinking about it. She nodded, satisfied, and went back to digging. Good, because you're the first person Mom has let stick around since we moved here. That means you're important. Later, when I told Marianne about the conversation, she turned bright red. I'm so sorry. She's been asking me about you and I've tried to be vague. But apparently she's decided to take matters into her own hands. It's fine. She's a good kid. She is, but she's also 7 and has no filter. Honestly, I said, it was kind of nice. Being interrogated by someone who just wants to make sure I'm not going to disappear. Marianne's expression softened. You're not, are you? Going to disappear? No, I'm not. The breakthrough came in October. We'd been seeing each other, officially, intentionally, for almost 2 months. Emma had a sleepover at a friend's house, and Marianne and I drove up the coast to a state park where there was supposed to be a meteor shower. We parked at a trailhead and hiked a mile. inland to a meadow away from any light pollution. Marianne had brought blankets and thermoses of hot chocolate, and we laid on our backs in the grass watching the sky. The meteors started slowly, then picked up, bright streaks of light cutting across the darkness, there and gone in seconds. "Make a wish," Marianne said when a particularly bright one flashed overhead. "Do you believe in that? Wishing on stars?" "I believe in hoping. And sometimes hope needs a ritual to attach to." I thought about what I'd wish for, what I wanted that I didn't already have. "I used to think I knew exactly what my life was supposed to look like," I said, still watching the sky. College, career, marriage, house, kids, a very specific roadmap. And when that fell apart, I thought I'd failed, thought I'd taken a wrong turn and ruined everything. And now I think maybe the roadmap was the problem. Maybe I was so focused on following it that I never stopped to ask if it was where I actually wanted to go. Marianne turned to look at me. "Where do you want to go?" I turned to meet her eyes, and suddenly the answer was obvious. "Here, I want to be right here. In a meadow in the middle of nowhere. With you." The words hung between us, simple and true and terrifying. "Ethan," she whispered. "I know we said slow. I know we said sure. But I am sure, Marianne. I'm sure that whatever I'm building here, I want to build it with you. I'm sure that I wake up every morning thinking about you. I'm sure that Emma is one of the best kids I've ever met, and Scout is a terrible guard dog, but I love him anyway. I'm sure that—" She kissed me. It was soft and sure and tasted like chocolate and felt like coming home. When we finally pulled apart, both of us were crying. "I'm sure too," she said. "I've been sure for weeks, but I was too scared to say it. Scared of messing this up or losing you, or you're not going to lose me. Promise?" "Promise." We kissed again as meteors fell around us. The universe putting on a show neither of us were watching anymore. The email came 3 days later. I was at Marianne's cottage, helping Emma with a project about ocean tides for school, when my phone buzzed. The subject line read, "Opportunity, lead PM position, San Francisco." My old boss, Jack, had recommended me for a senior project manager role at a major firm in the city. It was the kind of position I would have killed for 5 years ago. Big projects, bigger budget, a chance to work on developments that would reshape entire neighborhoods. The salary was almost double what I'd been making in Columbus. I stared at the email, my stomach dropping. "Everything okay?" Marianne asked from the kitchen. "Yeah, just work stuff." But it wasn't just work stuff. It was a choice materializing out of nowhere. Stay here in this small coastal town where I'd found peace and love, and a version of myself I actually liked. Or return to the career I'd spent a decade building, the identity I'd walked away from. I didn't respond to the email immediately. Instead, I drove to the lighthouse that night, parking at the small lot near the base and walking up the trail to where the beam swept across the ocean. This lighthouse had become my thinking spot over the past 6 months. Whenever I felt lost or confused or overwhelmed, I'd come here and watch the light make its steady rotation, illuminating the same patch of water over and over, patient and unchanging. "Thought I might find you here." I turned to see Marianne walking up the trail, wrapped in a thick cardigan against the October wind. "How did you know?" I asked. "Emma told me you left looking thoughtful and worried, which is 7-year-old for something's wrong. And you always come here when you're wrestling with something." She stood beside me, looking out at the dark water. "Want to talk about it?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the email. She read it silently, her expression carefully neutral. That's a huge opportunity." "Yeah. Are you going to take it?" "I don't know." I shoved the phone back in my pocket. 6 months ago, I would have jumped at this, would have seen it as validation, proof that I still had value in the world I left behind. But now you have something here. Now I have you, and Emma, and Scout, and Linda's pancakes and Sunday morning coffee, and this ridiculous lighthouse that I talk to when I'm confused. Marianne smiled slightly at that. "What's it telling you?" "To stop running. To choose something instead of running from something, to—" I paused, trying to find the words. "To trust that what I have here is real and worth staying for." But what if I'm making another mistake? What if I'm choosing comfort over ambition? What if in 5 years I resent being here, resent you, because I gave up this chance?" Marianne was quiet for a long moment. The lighthouse beam swept across the water, steady and sure. "Can I tell you something?" she said finally. When Michael died, people kept telling me that time heals all wounds, that eventually I'd move on, find someone new, be happy again. And for years I hated hearing that, because it felt like they were saying Michael was replaceable, that my grief had an expiration date. What changed? I realized they weren't wrong exactly. Time does help, but healing isn't about forgetting or replacing. It's about learning to hold both things, the grief and the joy, the past and the future. You don't have to choose between them. I'm not sure I follow. You think you have to choose between your career and us, between ambition and contentment, between who you were and who you're becoming. But what if you don't? What if you can have both, the work you love and the life you're building here? I thought about that. The job's in San Francisco. That's 2 hours away. 2 hours isn't that far. People commute, or work remotely part of the week, or, she paused, taking a breath. I've been offered a position too. Director of curriculum for a school district in Santa Rosa. Better pay, more responsibility, a chance to shape education policy instead of just teaching one class. My heart sank. When were you going to tell me? I wasn't going to take it. Was going to email them tomorrow and decline. Because of me? Because of Emma, primarily. She's happy here. She has friends and stability in the ocean. I didn't want to uproot her again. She looked at me, but also yes, because of you. Because I finally found someone who makes me want to risk being happy again, and I wasn't going to throw that away for a job. Marianne, let me finish. I was going to decline because I was scared. Scared of change, scared of wanting too much, scared of trusting that good things could last. But watching you these past few days, wrestling with this decision, I realized I was doing the same thing I was afraid you'd do, choosing comfort over possibility. The wind picked up, carrying the salt smell of the ocean. What if we both take them? I said slowly. What if we figure out a way to make it work? You in Santa Rosa, me in San Francisco, Emma still in school here, but with enough flexibility that we're not constantly choosing between career and family. That sounds complicated. Yeah, but so is everything worth having. Marianne turned to face me fully, and in the rotating light of the lighthouse, I could see hope and fear and determination in her expression. I'm terrified, she admitted. Me too. But I want to try. I want to build something with you that's big enough to hold all of us. Our pasts, our work, our daughter, our weird neurotic dog. Our daughter? I repeated softly. She blushed. I mean Emma. She's my daughter. But if you're going to be part of our lives, really part of them, then she's ours to raise together. If you want that. I pulled her close, wrapping my arms around her as the lighthouse beam swept across the water behind us. I want that, I whispered into her hair. I want all of it. We spent November figuring out the logistics. I accepted the San Francisco position with the condition that I work remotely, 3 days a week. Marianne took the Santa Rosa job with a flexible schedule that let her be home when Emma got out of school. We bought a beat-up Honda Civic as a commuter car and worked out a system where I'd drive down Monday mornings, stay in a tiny apartment near the office 3 nights a week, and come back Thursday evenings. It wasn't perfect. There were nights when I missed dinner with Emma, mornings when Marianne had to handle school drop-off alone, weekend projects that got delayed because I was too tired from the week. But it worked. And more than that, it felt right. I was using my skills again, solving complex problems, building things that mattered. But I wasn't consumed by it anymore. Wasn't measuring my worth by hours worked or projects completed. I was building a different kind of life, one with space for work and love and quiet. Sunday mornings and Emma's endless questions about marine biology. Christmas came and with it a plan. I'd been carrying a ring in my pocket for 3 weeks, waiting for the right moment. I'd bought it at a small jewelry store in Fort Bragg, a simple silver band, with a tiny diamond that caught the light, like a distant lighthouse beam. Nothing ostentatious, nothing that screamed, look at how much I spent. Just something beautiful and honest and true. I'd asked Emma's permission first, which seemed important. I want to marry your mom. I'd told her one Saturday while Marianne was at the grocery store. But only if you're okay with it. Emma had looked at me very seriously, the way only a 7-year-old who's been consulted on a major life decision can. Will you still help me find mermaids? Always. And let Scout sleep on your bed even though Mom says he's not supposed to? Probably. And not leave even when things get hard? That question hit deeper than she probably realized. Never, I promise. She'd nodded, satisfied. Then yes, you can marry Mom. She needs someone who understands about the ocean and isn't afraid of her when she's in a mood. The proposal happened on New Year's Eve. We'd planned to watch the fireworks from the cliff, just the three of us and Scout. But at the last minute, Emma fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from a day of playing with her cousins. We could wake her, Marianne said, or we could let her sleep and have a moment just for us. We bundled up and walked to the cliff's edge, leaving Emma with Marianne's mother who'd come to visit for the holidays. The sky was clear for once, stars bright above the dark ocean. In the distance, we could see lights from Fort Bragg, where they'd be setting off fireworks at midnight. Can you believe it's been 8 months since you moved here? Marianne said, leaning against me. Feels like longer. Like a whole lifetime. Good longer or bad longer? The best kind of longer. We stood in comfortable silence, watching the lighthouse beams sweep across the water. In the distance, the first fireworks started, bursts of gold and silver against the black sky. Marianne, I said. I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About holding multiple things at once. About not having to choose between the past and the future. Okay. And I realized you were right. I spent so much of my life thinking happiness was about getting to some destination. The right job, the right house, the right life trajectory. But being here with you, I've learned that happiness isn't a destination. It's right here. Right now. In the small moments we build together. I turned to face her, pulling the ring box from my pocket. Ethan, she breathed. I know we haven't been together that long. I know we're still figuring things out. But I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life figuring things out with you. Want to wake up every morning and choose you. Want to be there for Emma's first day of high school and college and whatever comes after. Want to grow old in this ridiculous coastal town with you and our neurotic dog and whatever else life throws at us. I opened the box, and the tiny diamond caught the light from the distant fireworks. Marianne Hale, will you marry me? She was crying, laughing, nodding all at once. Yes, absolutely, yes. I slipped the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly. Thank God, and kissed her as fireworks exploded above the ocean and the lighthouse beam swept across the water and somewhere in the distance. I swear I could hear Scout barking in approval. The planning started immediately. We wanted something small, just close friends and family on the beach in late summer. But first, there were logistics to sort out. Marianne's lease was up in April. My cottage wasn't big enough for 3 people and a large dog. We needed to find a place that could hold all of us. We found it in March, a house halfway between our 2 cottages with a view of the ocean, a yard big enough for Scout, and most importantly, a room Emma claimed immediately as her mermaid headquarters. The day we got the keys, we stood in the empty living room making plans about paint colors and furniture, and where to hang the photos of our combined histories. I can't believe this is real, Marianne said, spinning in a slow circle. 6 months ago, I was convinced I'd spend the rest of my life alone. And now we're buying a house together, technically renting with an option to buy. Don't ruin the moment with technicalities. I laughed and pulled her close. Everything felt perfect, settled, like all the pieces of my broken life had finally clicked into place in a configuration better than I'd ever imagined, which should have been my first warning. The email came a week before we were supposed to move in together. Subject opportunity, permanent position, New York City. My firm's parent company was opening a flagship office in Manhattan. They wanted me to lead it. Triple the salary, equity stake, a chance to shape the future of the entire organization. It would mean relocating. Full-time permanently, no remote work option, no 3-day weekends in Anchor Bay, no Sunday morning pancakes with Emma or evening walks with Marianne or Scout. Drooling on my shoes, I stared at the email for an hour before closing my laptop and walking down to the ocean. How did this keep happening? How did I keep getting offered exactly what I used to want at exactly the moment I'd found something better? I sat on the rocks where Marianne and I had watched bioluminescence, where Emma had asked me about my intentions, where I'd first started to believe I could be happy again. The ocean didn't have answers. It just kept crashing against the rocks, patient and relentless and indifferent to my crisis. I told Marianne that night. We were at her cottage soon. to be our former cottage, packing boxes in the kitchen while Emma slept upstairs. I'd been quiet all evening and she'd noticed. "Okay, what's wrong?" she asked, setting down a stack of plates. "You've been somewhere else all night." I showed her the email. She read it silently, her face going carefully blank. When she looked up, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "New York. Yeah, that's about as far from here as you can get without leaving the country." "I know. Are you going to take it?" "No, of course not. I'm not leaving you and Emma and—" "But you want to." The words hung between us, sharp and honest and terrible. "I don't want to," I said carefully. "But yeah, part of me. The part that spent a decade building a career. The part that still measures success by titles and salaries and impact. That part is tempted. And I hate that. I hate that I'm even considering it after everything we've built." Marianne sat down slowly, wrapping her arms around herself. "I can't ask you to give up your dreams for me," she said quietly. "I watched Michael do that. Turn down job offers, postpone grad school, always putting my needs first, and I loved him for it. But I also wondered sometimes if he resented me, if he felt trapped. I don't feel trapped. Not yet. But what about in 5 years? 10, what about when Emma's in high school and I'm dealing with teenage drama and you're stuck in a small town managing mid-level projects when you could have been running a flagship office in New York?" "Marianne, I need to tell you something," she interrupted. "I got a call yesterday from the Santa Rosa district. They want to promote me to regional superintendent. It's a huge position, but it would mean moving to Sacramento, and I was going to turn it down. Without even telling you, because I'd already decided my career wasn't worth disrupting our life here." I stared at her. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was scared. Scared of wanting too much. Scared of asking you to sacrifice your happiness for mine." She laughed bitterly. "Turns out we're both really good at making unilateral decisions about what we're willing to give up." We sat in silence, the weight of 2 major opportunities pressing down on the small life we'd been trying to build. "What do we do?" I asked. "I don't know." We fought about it. Not yelling and slamming doors fighting, but the quiet, devastating kind where you can feel the foundation cracking beneath you. I argued that we could make it work. Long-distance relationships existed. People managed careers and families across time zones all the time. She argued that long distance was just slow death, that Emma needed stability, that she wasn't going to spend her life waiting for me to come home on weekends. I pointed out that she was being a hypocrite, that she had her own opportunity she wanted to pursue. She pointed out that Sacramento was 2 hours away, not 3,000 miles. Round and round we went, both of us scared and defensive and unable to see a path forward that didn't require someone to sacrifice everything. Emma found us sitting on the porch 2 days later, both of us exhausted from another circular argument. "Are you getting unmarried?" she asked, her voice small. "What? No, sweetie, we're not," Marianne started. "Because you've been sad for 2 days and you don't look at each other the same way, and Scout is confused." I looked at Marianne. She looked at me. In Emma's 7-year-old logic, we saw the truth we'd been avoiding. We were making this about careers and geography when it was really about fear. Fear of wanting too much. Fear of asking for what we needed. Fear of trusting that love was strong enough to bend without breaking. "Come here," I said to Emma, and she climbed onto my lap. "We're not getting unmarried. We're just trying to figure some grown-up stuff out." "What kind of stuff?" "The kind where both people want something, but they're not sure how to have it without losing each other." "That sounds dumb," Emma said matter-of-factly. "Why can't you just both have what you want?" "Because sometimes what we want is in different places." She thought about this. Serious and thoughtful in that way kids are when they're genuinely trying to solve a problem. "When I can't decide between 2 things, Mom always asks me which one I'd regret not choosing," she said. "Maybe you should ask yourself that." That night, after Emma was asleep and Marianne had gone home, I drove to the lighthouse. I sat at the base looking up at the beam as it swept across the dark water, and I asked myself Emma's question: what would I regret more? Taking the New York job and losing Marianne, or staying here and always wondering what I could have built in that Manhattan office? The answer came faster than I expected. I'd already lost one marriage because I wasn't paying attention, because I was so focused on career advancement that I missed the slow erosion of everything else. I'd spent 6 months learning to measure success, differently by morning, coffee and evening walks and a 7-year-old's laughter. By the way Marianne looked at me when she thought I wasn't watching, by Scout's enthusiastic greeting every time I came home. The New York job was impressive. It was prestigious and lucrative, and probably the pinnacle of what I could achieve in my field. But it wasn't worth losing this. I called the New York office the next morning and declined. Then I drove to Sacramento and spent the day researching the school district position Marianne had been offered. That evening, I showed up at her cottage with a folder full of printouts. "What's this?" she asked, confused. "Research on the regional superintendent position. Demographics, budget reports, strategic plans for the next 5 years. Also, rental listings for houses in Sacramento with reasonable commutes to both the district office and San Francisco." She stared at me. "Ethan, you should take it. The Sacramento job. It's perfect for you. You're incredible at seeing the big picture, at understanding how systems work and how to make them better. Emma could go to amazing schools there, and I can keep my current position while we figure out if I want to pivot into something else. Maybe consulting or teaching or I don't know, opening a bookstore." "You want to open a bookstore?" "Maybe, I don't know. Point is I have options, and none of them matter as much as building a life with you and Emma." Marianne was crying now, and I was pretty sure I was too. "You turned down New York?" Without hesitation. "But it was your dream job." "No, it was my old dream. The one I inherited from who I used to be. My new dream is right here." I took her hands. "I want you to have the career you deserve. Want Emma to grow up seeing her mother chase her ambitions. Want to figure out who I am when I'm not defined by job titles. And I want to do all of that with you." She kissed me then, fierce and desperate and full of relief. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "More sure than I've ever been about anything." We moved to Sacramento in June. The house we rented was nothing special. A 3-bedroom bungalow in a neighborhood with good schools and a park where Scout could terrorize squirrels. But it had a porch where we could sit in the evenings, a yard where Emma could dig for buried treasure, and big windows that let in enough light to make it feel like home. Marianne started her new position in July and was immediately in her element, shaping curriculum, mentoring teachers, making decisions that would impact thousands of students. She came home energized and challenged, and more herself than I'd ever seen her. I kept my San Francisco job, but started taking on more strategic projects that I could do remotely, and I started writing essays about construction and rebuilding, both literal and metaphorical. Nothing published yet, but it felt good to create something with words instead of concrete. Emma thrived. She made friends easily, joined a swim team, and started a mermaid club at her new school that was apparently very popular. Scout adjusted to suburban life by befriending every dog in a 3-block radius and developing an obsession with the mailman. We drove back to Anchor Bay one weekend a month, staying in our old cottage, which we'd kept as a retreat. Linda still made us pancakes. The lighthouse still swept its beam across the water. The ocean still crashed against the rocks with patient indifference. But we were different, stronger, more certain of who we were individually and together. We got married in September, exactly a year after I'd proposed. The ceremony was on the beach in Anchor Bay, just as we'd planned. Marianne wore a simple white dress and no shoes. Emma was the flower girl and took her job, so seriously she narrated each petal she dropped. Scout wore a bow tie and managed not to chase any seagulls during the vows. My father came from Toledo, frail but present. Marianne's mother cried through the entire ceremony. Our friends from town showed up with casseroles and champagne and zero judgment about the unconventional path we'd taken. When the officiant asked if I took Marianne to be my wife, I looked at her, this woman who'd taught me that healing wasn't about forgetting, that love wasn't about perfection, that home was something you built together, one small choice at a time, and said yes without hesitation. When she said yes back, I believed in second chances more than I'd ever believed in anything. 3 years later, we're sitting on the porch of our Sacramento house on a Sunday evening in October. Emma is 9 now, doing homework at the kitchen table while music plays from her phone. Scout is asleep at my feet, graying around the muzzle but still enthusiastic about everything. Marianne is reading next to me, her head on my shoulder, occasionally highlighting passages in a book about educational policy. I'm editing an essay about the difference between building structures, and building lives. It's ordinary, mundane even, the kind of evening I used to dismiss as boring back when I measured life by achievements and advancement. Now I know better. This quiet evening, with my wife reading beside me and our daughter singing along to some pop song in the kitchen and our dog snoring contentedly, this is everything. I think about the man I was 3 years ago, sitting in that Columbus kitchen with Sarah's iPad and a world falling apart. If I could go back and tell him anything, it would be this: the breaking was necessary. The loss, the grief, the complete destruction of everything you thought you knew. It was all making space for something better. You'll drive west with no destination. You'll rent a cottage by the ocean and learn to breathe again. You'll meet a woman with kind eyes and a complicated past, and she'll teach you that love doesn't erase pain. It just gives you a reason to keep choosing hope anyway. You'll get job offers that seem perfect and you'll turn them down. You'll make choices that look like sacrifices but feel like freedom. You'll build a family that doesn't look like the one you imagined, and it will be so much better than anything you could have planned. You'll learn that life isn't about following a roadmap or achieving certain milestones. It's about being brave enough to start over, to believe in second chances, to trust that the person you're becoming is better than the person you've been. What are you thinking about? Marianne asks, looking up from her book. How lucky I am. Sentimental tonight? Every night. She smiles and kisses my cheek, then goes back to reading. Emma calls out, asking how to spell metamorphosis. Scout shifts in his sleep, his paw twitching in some dream. The lighthouse in Anchor Bay is 100 miles away, but I can picture its beam sweeping across the water, steady and sure and constant, a guide for anyone who's lost, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there's always light if you know where to look. And I finally do. A note to you. If you're reading this, maybe you're going through your own kind of breaking. Maybe someone you trusted has betrayed you. Maybe the life you built has fallen apart. Maybe you're sitting in the wreckage wondering how you'll ever find your way back. I can't tell you it'll be easy. Can't promise the pain will disappear or that you won't carry scars. But I can tell you this: the breaking makes space for rebuilding. The loss teaches you what actually matters. And sometimes the life you thought was ending is just the beginning of something better. Be brave enough to start over, to drive west or east or in whatever direction feels like healing, to let yourself be found by unexpected people in unexpected places, to trust that love, the real kind, the one that grows slowly and roots deep, is worth waiting for. Your lighthouse is out there. Keep looking. And if you have your own story of heartbreak and healing, of endings that became beginnings, I hope you'll share it, because we all need reminders that we're not alone in the breaking and that second chances are real. Stay strong, stay open, and remember, the best version of your life might be the one you never planned.